Central African time. You're still tuned in to News and Views. Myself, Salailo Makwidiri. And it's time for a hashtag Africa Focus feature. This part of the show where we look at some of the biggest stories on the African continent, what you and I as Africans need to pay attention to. And we are going to be looking at the Horn of Africa because for decades, global attention in Africa is largely centered on the Sahel, the Great Lakes region, and North Africa. But increasingly, the Horn of Africa is also emerging as one of the world's most strategically contested regions, stretching from Sudan to Somalia, Eritrea, Ethiopia, Djibouti. The region sits at the gateway to what we know to be the Red Sea and one of the busiest maritime trade routes on earth. But there's a lot. The conflict in Sudan, Ethiopia's surge for sea access, Somaliland's growing international profile, the war in Gaza and the genocide that we saw unfold for the last couple of years, the Houthis' attacks in the Red Sea, and just growing involvement by powers, including the likes of Turkey, some of the Gulf states, China, the United States of America, and Russia have essentially transformed the Horn of Africa into a major diplomatic battleground. The African Union, headquartered in Addis Ababa, has also found itself at the center of many of these developments. So to help us unpack what's driving this diplomatic race and why it matters just beyond the region, but also for the rest of Africa, we're joined by Musinguzi Goodluck, Ugandan-based journalist and editor with Kigezi News, also a very, very good friend of the show. Brother Musinguzi, good morning. Always a pleasure having you on News and Views.
Good morning from Kampala, Uganda.
There we go. I want to jump right into it, Brother Musinguzi, just for the sake of our listeners who may not closely follow the Horn of Africa, that very, very strategically significant area on the African continent. How and why has it suddenly become one of the world's most important diplomatic hotspots?
Thank you very much. If you can see what is happening today in Iran, and of course, as you said, Israel, Gaza, and all that, it shows you that the business people are trying to look for an alternative route where they can pass their goods and services. But I can take you back, especially Egypt. Egypt, in their constitution, actually, I'm told, if I get it very well, Article number 1, it talks about the River Nile and everybody who really tries to tamper with that water. And therefore, Ethiopia has gone ahead to build the dam, the Africa Renaissance Dam. And that one sort of poked Egypt. Egypt has not fought, we have not seen them go to war with Ethiopia, but definitely there was a red flag. And so when Ethiopia now moves again and they want to have an access to the sea, whom do they go for? After fighting Eritrea and failed, they now go for Somaliland. Somaliland has cut off itself from Somalia. And therefore, the meetings we are seeing in Egypt is that you are seeing that Egypt, Eritrea, Somalia, they are coming together, but these are known enemies of Ethiopia. And therefore, it really comes in at a time when Africa is trying to, if you see the investments from the Dangote group of companies in oil in Lamu, which is in Kenya, which is also near Somalia. So there's so much that is happening in the world that the world is now looking for an alternative. But then the question is, will Egypt keep letting Ethiopia build the muscle? Once it builds the muscle it needs, it means there will be a problem. Even as from here in Uganda, there was a debate in a few months where the president of Uganda said Uganda also wants a route to the sea, access to the sea. And Kenyans were up in arms saying, you mean this is where we have gone? So you can see that all of the African countries, especially those who are landlocked, are trying to say, how do we partake of the pie of what is happening in the region? So for me, we wake up. So there are countries in the Gulf, especially Turkey. You have talked about Turkey, Saudi Arabia. They are trying to say, no, let countries continue controlling the access to the sea the way it was. But remember, there is also Israel and Ethiopia. Israel, they have recognized Somaliland. Ethiopia is doing the same because they want to take that part of the world to have access to the sea. So it's a complex. And even now, the United States, China, everybody comes in, because if we continue having Iran resisting the Americans, if the Houthis also come in and say, no, we are going to block this, so definitely it's a hot cake. If the Strait of Hormuz has become a bigger issue, it means the subset of this is the Red Sea.
There's something which, I always felt when it comes to the Horn of Africa in particular, and how the rest of Africa interacts with it. It almost feels distant, it feels distant to the rest of sub-Saharan Africa and the whole continent, as a region. From your perspective, why is this? And having, Ethiopia being the host of the headquarters of the AU, one would expect that the rest of the continent would deal a bit more intimately with the Horn of Africa. But we're not. It feels like it's everyone else partaking in it, even European countries, even some of the Gulf states in the US, but the rest of Africa is so distant. Why is that? And maybe could Africa being a bit more involved with the Horn of Africa maybe quell the tensions and have it a bit more stable than it currently is?
So many years ago, when the American forces were dragged in the capital city of Somalia, Mogadishu, and terrorism took over, that means that's when Africa was opened. That's when the eyes of so many other countries opened up. They felt that if they let Somalia, for example, be overtaken by Al-Shabaab and all this, it was going to be a problem. So AU, working with the Americans and all these other ones, they managed to organize, and you remember Ugandan forces were the first to come in, to try to be the boots which were on the ground after, Somalia had been torn apart. Now, Africa must realize that if you want to do business, so for example, Congo, DRC, and maybe West Africa, and even other countries, if you want to import goods from Asia, and they will take the ships, go via South Africa, it becomes very, very expensive. These countries can't compete. And therefore, most of the countries have found that the Horn of Africa is near Asia. Actually, if I can say, sometimes some ships can take 2 weeks or less than that. There's some big improvement from 45 days that we used to hear of long time ago. So it is becoming more easier to bring goods and services via that point. And therefore, every part of Africa is thinking, what do we do? So, for example, you think about Uganda, which is going to have its oil exported through Tanga, that is Tanzania. We would have done it through Kenya, but maybe they delayed and Tanzania took it up. So everybody is looking at that coastline. And therefore, Africa will not sit. Other African countries will wake up. The African Union is sort of, it's something, I think most African countries will go in either to fight or they will go in to seek diplomatic ties with different allies, minus the AU, because the AU looks to be weak in some of these points. For example, see Ebola. How are we handling Ebola? The world has just, put everything around us. A few cases, when they have cases in their countries, nobody touches them. Where is AU? So AU is sort of, it will remain in Ethiopia, but I can tell you what, if you see what Egypt is starting, it is something bigger that is going to bypass AU. But other African countries, nobody is going to keep quiet when there's business out there. You want a share, 10%, 20%, but definitely countries going through South Africa, it's another big issue.
I want us to go for a quick break. When we come back, I want to focus on some specifics. I want to look at Ethiopia and their pursuit of direct access to the sea, which has dominated headlines for some time now. And then also just look at Sudan. It also remains locked in a very, very devastating civil war. I want us to touch on how that conflict in itself has also changed the political and security dynamics across the Horn of Africa and into Central Africa. But we'll do that after the short break.
ACNE Group of Companies, a Muslim-owned business, offer an Islamic conscious approach to insurance founded on ethical principles, transparency, integrity, and responsible service. This allows us to provide insurance solutions that align with ethical values while maintaining the protection and service standards you expect. From your first inquiry to the moment you need to claim, we're committed to providing professional, transparent, and reliable support. Choose insurance that reflects your values while giving you confidence and peace of mind. Speak to ACNE Group of Companies today to learn more about our Islamic conscious approach to insurance. Call Rafiq Isaacs on 084 822 6570. ACNE Group of Companies comprises authorized financial services providers under FSP numbers 43281, 4553, and 45915. Products are underwritten by New National Assurance Company Limited, FSP number 2603.
Almost 1 in 5 South African children attend school each day without having eaten breakfast. This seriously affects their ability to concentrate and understand lessons. The Al-Imdad Foundation's Make Breakfast Possible campaign allows learners to enjoy a high-energy cereal at the start of the school day. Help children to focus on learning and not hunger. Let's make breakfast possible today. Donate online at alimdad.com or call 0861 786 243 for more information.
Shimmer, sparkle, captivate. Nothing less than a masterpiece. Droplets of gold inspires precious design. Platinum bursts with intricate freshness, and every pure diamond becomes more than just a girl's best friend. Voda Gold Gem Jewelers, where timeless dreams become a reality. Come to us. We tailor-make designer gold, platinum, and diamond jewelry. Trade in or remodel your old gold. Clad yourself with classy name-branded watches. We offer insurance valuation and freezer card calculation. Visit us at 534 Ridge Road, Overport, or call 031 208 9142. Voda Gold Gem Jewelers, manufacturers of fine gold and diamond jewelry.
When the perfect blend of stylish decor, exquisite halal cuisine, and warm hospitality come together, it could only mean Albeit Lodge, your true home away from home. Albeit is the ideal heaven for families, business people, and tourists with its 4-star family rooms and other luxurious facilities. Conveniently situated close to Port Elizabeth Airport, the beach, and other amenities, your stay will be truly unforgettable, as you'll be taking home lasting memories of the warm hospitality, the serenity and tranquility that Albeit has to offer. For reservations, call 041 583 6415 or visit www.albeitlodge.co.za.
Rejuvenating media day by day. This is Salam Media.
12 minutes before 9, you're still tuned into News and Views with myself, Salailo Makwidi, and I'm still in conversation with Ugandan-based journalist and editor with Kigezi News, Brother Goodluck Musinguzi. And we're having a conversation around the Horn of Africa and how it has become the world's new diplomatic hotspot. And Brother Goodluck, thank you so much for staying with us. Before we went on to that short break, I wanted us to almost focus on some specifics, and I want us to start with Ethiopia and their pursuit of direct access to the sea. It has dominated regional headlines for some time now. And I want to know, from your perspective, how has that issue almost reshaped relationships with neighboring countries, countries such as Somalia, Eritrea, and Somaliland to a very, very large extent?
Thank you very much. When a business person goes to Asia and is bringing a container of goods, when they reach some of these ports, either from Kenya going upwards, you pay additional costs. For example, to Uganda, you pay additional $3,000, between 3,000 and 5,000 US dollars. And therefore, Ethiopia is trying to see how do you cut that additional cost for each container that uses ports of different countries. So if it goes between 5,000 to 10,000, then that means there is a problem in terms of competition for business. So Ethiopia is trying to access the sea so that it reduces some of these costs. And even other countries, like I told you, even Uganda, they missed an opportunity when they were fighting with Eritrea. They should have either negotiated for a path, which they didn't, and maybe because the war was very bloody and it all ended how it ended. But now Ethiopia has found a soft spot in Somaliland. So in Somalia, they have Al-Shabaab. If you read reports as of today, the army has failed to contain Al-Shabaab, even when other countries want to leave. And therefore, Somalia remained very fragile. And Ethiopia saw an opportunity and they said, why don't we work with Somaliland? And therefore, the whole thing is purely business. They are doing well with Ethiopian Airlines. They are doing so much investments, but they have been lacking that one thing of access to the sea. It reduces so much on their business, and I can see they are either ready for war or they are ready to defend this because so many billions of US dollars are at stake.
Very concerning. Another aspect which has emerged in the last couple of years, and I think quite strongly this year, is the conversation around Somaliland. We're hearing news that they've officially, been recognized by the Israeli pariah state. They are strengthening diplomatic ties with Israel, and they are also, I think, pushing strongly for complete independence from Somalia. The situation with Somaliland and how they, over the years, have come quite strongly with their intentions and what role they look to be playing in the Horn of Africa.
It is, and as you said, there's so much just that happens in the world every other 24 hours. With Somalia fractured around, things like religion and tribes, Somaliland has kept itself together. They have not had issues of Al-Shabaab coming to disturb. And therefore, they sort of become a soft pad for Ethiopia. Israel, wanting to use it to build maybe want to build an army base and all these other ones. But is Israel alone, or the United States is also behind? If they keep quiet and China comes and takes over, what happens? And therefore, as Somalia, tries to fight these wars that are not ending, that they have failed to stabilize their army to defend itself, to defend the sovereignty of their country, that they are still fighting in Mogadishu for small things, and yet their sovereignty is being, cut off. It is very sad. But for me, I see that Somaliland is taking an advantage of, these broken points, and it is moving ahead. And should it add on Ethiopia recognizing it as an independent state, I can see so much moving, because if Ethiopia is willing to provide military escorts and maybe even bases in order to protect the line that it will have taken over for it to access the sea, it means Somaliland is going to be a very big issue, and it could be one of the newest African countries in the region.
That would be a very, very interesting development if it does happen. I want to move forward now to, I think, what is the most worrying of conflicts on the African continent, Sudan. They remain locked in a devastating civil war. It has been phrased by a lot of organizations as the biggest humanitarian crisis on the African continent right now. You're very close as Uganda to Sudan. I think the number of migrants from Sudan who are in Uganda, Uganda being a very, very, I think, active participant when it comes to being a host country, when it comes to that discourse. How has that conflict changed the political and security dynamics across the Horn of Africa, Sudan, and just how much of it needs and demands of all of us to keep it in the conversation?
Very sad for us as Africa, because, as most of the African people, when they are going their daily business, trying to survive, they don't know that there are powers which don't want to see them in peace. There are different powers which come in with different ideas, people selling different things, but in the end, things that affect people. One of the things that disturbed me was when I visited one of the hospitals in Kampala. I found a couple from Khartoum. They had had a baby and they were thanking the doctors. But when we asked, they said they had walked on foot from Khartoum via South Sudan to Uganda. And therefore there is that hopelessness. Even the mayor of Khartoum is in Uganda now as we speak, in Kampala. So we don't see the end of this because there are different powers at play. As the United States, tries to come in and try to push against the rebels also have access to some of these regional powers. And therefore Sudan, and even the wider Africa, should always know that there is always somebody who is waiting to divide us, to see us fight, to see us kill ourselves. And remember, we are the market of their arms. We are the market. It looks like those companies which make arms, they don't want to see peace, and especially in Africa. So if we can be pulled off by something small. So from the day Bashir left that office, and yet Africa was celebrating that one of the dictators had gone, now we see that as we speak, Sudan is no longer there, and we see them every other time sending, delegations coming to Kampala, trying to ask Uganda to intervene. So, for example, recently the court decided that the rebel leader of Sudan had been sentenced to death in absentia. And when the team came to Uganda, the president of Uganda said that line might not help to solve, because if he knows that anytime you get him, you are going to kill him, he's going to continue fighting. But who are these forces behind? When Sudan keeps destabilized, who is benefiting? And as you can see, that as others are trying to fight in the Horn of Africa to have a pie, there is also another group which wants Sudan to keep where it is, so that it doesn't come to add on other issues, especially on the use of River Nile, and also them also trying to ask for access to the sea. So it's a pity for Africa. That's how we are going to continue. I don't see Sudan having peace in the next 10 years.
Sure. That's a very, very scary scenario that you're painting, Brother Goodluck. I want to wrap up the conversation with, I think, one aspect. If you had to identify one development in the Horn of Africa that the international community, and I think Africa as a whole, should be watching over the next 6 to 12 months, what would it be and why?
Dangote group of companies coming to the Horn of Africa, especially Lamu near Somalia. Are they targeting only oil from Kenya? No, they're also targeting oil from Somalia. Somalia, yes, should Somaliland also have oil? So Dangote is going to be one of the major, he has put so much money at stake for him to decide to invest in that part of the world. And therefore, for us as Africa, if oil can become a little bit cheaper, as we see on what is happening in the Middle East, for me, he is the man to watch.
Hope that's going to be a development that comes to reality and that all of us are going to be seeing unfold. But otherwise, this is where we're going to be wrapping up the conversation. Musinguzi Goodluck, Ugandan-based journalist and editor with Kigezi News. Always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Have a blessed day.
There we go. Yeah, I think a very, very in-depth and important conversation, unpacking the complex political, economic and security dynamics that are currently shaping the Horn of Africa. And yeah, really appreciate Brother Musinguzi Goodluck there for unpacking it all for us. A very, very complicated part of Africa. And I think one that, especially as sub-Saharan Africa, we're not interacting with as much as we need to, but we definitely have to, because it's very, very strategically placed. And I think what happens in the Horn of Africa ultimately is going to be affecting the whole of the continent, as it's always the case with African states and how we interact with each other. Going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be having our hashtag Friday feature, proudly brought to you by African Muslims Agency.